Welcome to Clinic Success Secrets. Today, it is my honor to have Phil Wong from Arlo Medical on today again. Phil is the founder and owner of a thriving medical aesthetics clinic based in beautiful Alberta, Canada, and he oversees all aspects of the business from client consultations to treatment administration, staff management, marketing, business development, and just about all facets of running a successful clinic. Phil is an expert in a range of treatments, including fillers, Botox, and texture procedures, with a strong commitment to setting industry standards and providing up-to patient care. Phil, to me, based on the communication we've had so far, it strikes me as someone who's really passionate about the creative element of, aesthetic practices. So I really think anyone listening to is going to get a lot out of the conversation. And with that being said, Bill, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Thomas.
So Phil, I suppose obviously gave you a bit of an introduction there, but Jonathan, I think for people listening here, they get a lot out of actually finding how you got to where you are today. You could share a bit more about your story. The story behind your decision to transition from working in a pharmacy to founding Arlo Medical Injections, and what were some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I've been a pharmacist over a decade now, but prior to being prior to going to pharmacy school, I was very involved in art. Like I love doing art. I love drawing, painting, clay work. I did a lot of that for a while, but I wanted to go into art as something to do in university. But then told my parents, and they said, as the typical Asian parent would say, that is stupid, and you should find something that'll make you money instead. So I decided on pharmacy just because it seemed like something that I would somewhat enjoy, would still help people. But after doing it for a decade, I still felt there was this bit of a lack in my life. I really missed doing that art. Just missed doing art in general. So then I talked to a few nurses who had started doing aesthetics and started learning a bit more about it, and then realized that as a pharmacist, I could do it as well, at least in Alberta, where I am in this province. So then I looked into it, got some training, and just decided to go for it. And just because I really felt like I would be good at it just because of my artistic background. And now that I've done it for a few years, I realize I still love it. It is fun. The best part of my day is going in and, treating my patients and just seeing their faces at the end of the day, just after my procedure's done, and giving them the mirror. And that's my favorite part of the day, is seeing their reaction, just because I love doing the work and I do it well. And then I feel like if I'm satisfied with the work, they're typically satisfied with the work as well. So that's just a lot of personal satisfaction in creating the business. However, as a pharmacist, there's not a lot of us who have started doing this. There's quite a few of us now, but when I started a few years back, there weren't a ton of us. And a lot of the companies that would sell the product, they're not used to having a pharmacist as a medical director. Just because out east, pharmacists are not allowed to prescribe, whereas in Alberta, we are. So it's kind of a specialized thing that we're allowed to do here in Alberta. So when I try to contact those companies and insurance companies, for that matter, there was a lot of challenges trying to get them to A, sell me product, B, get insured, and just trying to find that path to kind of get my business up and running. So just took a lot of persistence, a lot of harassing. That was definitely a word.
That's the word. That's the word we use.
A lot of touching bases with the reps and the representatives of the companies, just to make sure to get the stuff I need to get to start my business up.
Love it. It's refreshing hearing, someone who's coming at it from that artistic side. We talked before, and kind of that whole image of the Michelangelo sculpture, where you're really just like chipping away what already exists. And we talked, I think we touched about this before on a conversation about a book I've been reading recently, Psycho-Cybernetics. And said, actually, I still need to send to you. Written by a plastic surgeon. And there, obviously, there's a difference between that and some of the work we're doing, but aesthetic procedures in general, that where people would come in and the biggest insights that he found were the actual fundamental change in self-perception that people were experiencing, one way or the other. Either they would get the work and maybe they'd actually realize, I don't identify as this new person, or else the other way around, where they come out and they feel literally like a new human being. So I can imagine that being incredibly rewarding, especially given your creative background.
I find from that context, I find with most of my patients, they, especially as you get a little bit older, they don't feel like who they see in the mirror is what actually represents them, because they're still young, they're still active, they're still strong, they're fit. But then, however, when you look in the mirror, aging catches up to you after a while, and you can still feel as young and fit on the inside, but then they want their outside to represent their inside, right? So a lot of times they just want to look as good as they feel. And sometimes it's not so much as I'm augmenting the facial features, I'm really just restoring the facial features more than anything. Just kind of bring them back to that youthful look, just to make the outside match the inside, essentially.
It's a lovely way of putting it. And when starting Arlo Medical, I can imagine you touched on this, the difficulties, given the fact that Alberta, well, pharmacists are allowed to get into injections and so on, whereas that's not the case in a lot of other places. I can imagine that skill set, that, and also the subject of number one, of actually the implementing the procedures itself, but also the supplementary skills. We talked about this before, the marketing, the actual day-to-day operation. That really, I think, is where heavy lifting from. The managing people, making sure customers are happy, reputation management, inventory management, and you're right, getting good deals. What were the biggest learning when making that transition? It was obviously kind of a case of how long a piece of string, but what would you say were the top 2 or 3 challenges and lessons that you learned when starting off? What caught you surprised as a challenge?
I think the hardest bit was probably the marketing. I'm still working on that right now. The first couple of years, I really spent more time honing my craft, making sure that I could be the best as I could be doing what I do. But this year, I'm really focusing on my marketing and learning a lot of new insights that I probably should have done earlier. And I'm going to say that I'm pretty lucky that I've gone as far as I have without doing some of those things. But so, for example, paid marketing is underrated, and I think it's important at the beginning to kind of get that client database kind of up and running, so get your clients in the door, try to start paying for the business. Whereas I kind of went the opposite way. I think I try to focus really hard on organic growth, which is great too. I think that's super important to have organic growth. To have SEOs, to have to be able to show up higher on the search lists and Google, whatnot. But focused a lot on that because I think part of it was because I spent so much money setting up the business. I had all these business loans that I didn't want to drop tens of thousands of dollars more on marketing. And and not to mention, it's hard to kind of track how effective your marketing dollars are sometimes, depending on where it is. So I always have an interview at the beginning of most sessions. My interview questionnaires, I usually have a question that's like, how did you hear about us? Did someone refer you? Where did you hear about us? So that's kind of helping me track where most of my marketing is coming from. But I think paid marketing is important to kind of get things up and running. And if you're if you have a lot, especially if you have a lot of business expenses overhead, you need that customer base to kind of come in relatively quickly. And I'm noticing that paid marketing is actually, I'm starting to do a bit more of that this year, and that's actually paying off. But I think my organic growth is finally, after 2.5 years, kind of that long tail of organic growth is starting to catch up as well. So I'm kind of seeing both now, which is kind of nice. But if I were to start again, I would definitely put a little bit more money into paid marketing, just because the first couple of years is definitely a bit of a struggle.
I think that's, you touched on so many great things there. And these are, I have to admit, quite aligned with what my recommendations usually are with my clients that run clinics, where as scary as it is to invest back into marketing, when you, as you said, you've got all these physical, the inventory and the actually the place you're working from and all that, you need cash flow, and cash flow is, king. And separate conversation. I ran webinars on this. I'll link to them in the show notes. But paid is a great way of getting the ball rolling. There's no two ways around it. I'll just give recommendations for any clinic owners that are listening. Number one, how do I immediately increase my people walking in my doors? Number one, audit your existing paid traffic, strategy. Number two, and again, this is from an SEO at heart, my background after biomedical engineering. The SEO is good and all that. That works passively. It's a lovely way of consistently bringing you new business, but reaching out to people that you've done business with before. Database reactivation is incredibly underrated. I'm not sure if you've had much success with this, but it's a thing that I'm always an advocate of. The easiest customers to sell to are people that you've already sold to. They already know your product, and especially if you've as many beaming 5-star reviews as yourself. So it makes it a bit easier, but start off the page, get the ball rolling, do your warm outreach to people you know. But reaching out to your existing list, if you've been in business for a few years, probably have a couple of hundred, if not more, people that you may have helped before that maybe just haven't remembered that you're still there. So I AIDS, I'd love to find out a bit more about what has been working for you, if you don't mind sharing. Definitely super powerful. But simply for adult, how has that journey looked? Have you putting more of an emphasis on Facebook? Has been local service ads, Google ads, or how's that look for you guys?
Mostly Facebook. I do email marketing campaigns as well. So no, sorry, not Facebook, Instagram. I think most of my stuff is Instagram. It's very image based, very the aesthetics spaces. So I find Instagram is a little bit more effective that way. And so I use Instagram ads, and I do, I have an email marketing list. So all my clients that come in, they're usually added to a list. They can unsubscribe at any time, of course, but those who don't, I usually send out, set up automated journeys through MailChimp is what I use. And from that, every time they show up, they automatically gets tagged in MailChimp. And then after 3 months, they get little reminders to kind of, it's time for your little touch up with Botox.
Yeah.
And then I find that helps. I find a lot of people mention that, they thank me for those reminders. Because I was like, yeah, my life gets busy, I kind of forget, but a reminder just I got your email that just reminded me to come in. So I find that's been quite helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, as I said, just stay top of mind. It's so important. Like, one thing I usually recommend is to increase the frequency when it comes to email marketing. Some people just aren't doing it enough. And, also buying the two together. There's a big thing that I see a lot of clinic owners, that they're not leveraging fully, is making the most of traffic from the SEO and reusing blog content for the email marketing, but also similarly having pop-up. And a very, very powerful strategy that often works very well, especially for aesthetic clinics, is retargeting people that have visited the website already for the Google ads or SEO on Facebook. So instead of just reaching out to a cold audience or lookalike audience, sometimes people are just doing their due diligence. They're clicking around, checking, in this case, Arlo Medical, and they're just not quite ready to make a purchase. And then you get the patient guide to push them over the edge. And all these things work really, really well in tandem. So it's great that you're having these realizations now, and it's clearly paying off.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I find that helps a lot is to have a referral program too. So, people who come in and refer a client, new client, usually, they each get a discount off their treatment. So the referee gets a discount, and then the referee who comes in also gets a discount off their treatment as well. So then I find that's helped a lot. And just being good at your job. I think most of that referral business comes down to being good at your craft. So that was my main focus for the first couple of years, is just getting really, really good at what I do. And I think that's kind of paid dividends in the long run, just because now that people who do come in, especially from a referral, they barely ask me any questions. They barely do any research, just because they trust their referral source, and they trust. And really, every client of mine is a bit of a walking billboard, as long as you do the good work, right?
Yeah. In this case, literally. Yeah. I think what you're saying is so true. Is to say, you need good sales when you don't have good marketing. You need good marketing when you don't have a good product. Great products, it makes the marketing easier, which makes the sales easier. So, 100% start with genuinely helping people. And as the previous guest of mine, Ken Mitchell, said, you look after patients, the money to take care of itself. You need to make sure you have the patient.
To an extent, yeah. And I think the patient care is number one for me. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And again, on that topic, are there specific strategies that you employ to make sure the patients are experiencing are getting an exceptional experience? Are you doing much in terms of brand management, making sure you're getting your reviews? How does that look? How do you make sure every patient has an absolute, 5-star experience consistently?
For me, I think that's part of what sets me apart a little bit from other clinics, especially talking to some clients of mine who have been to other clinics, have been to other, aesthetic clinics. What they tell me is that I really take my time into, doing the consult, doing the assessment. Whereas a lot of times when they go to other clinics, it feels like they're just an assembly line. They're in, 15 minutes later, they're out. Whereas I like to take my time. I like to have a conversation, figure out what their fears are, what their desires are. And then I also make sure that every patient I go through the same process. I mark them up. I draw on their faces to make sure every injection point is spot on. So I properly take my time to make sure it's accurate and precise as possible, so there's less risk of mistakes. Because really, when it comes down to filler especially, there's a lot of risks to it, right? Because if you're not in the right spot, if you're not in the right depth, if you're not using the right technique, there's always this huge fear that we could block a blood vessel, a vascular occlusion with filler. And I've never had that happen, knock on wood, but and I think part of that comes down to just being precise every single time. And I find the patients who do mention that I do take my time, they actually really appreciate it. They feel very comfortable. They're saying they actually feel more comfortable with me doing what I do, taking my time. Even though it takes a bit longer, but they don't mind, because they feel that, they're in good hands that way, as opposed to someone's trying to rush them through the clinic, get them in and out so they can get another client in. Whereas I focus really just making sure I take the amount of time I need to get the perfect job done. So, and
Great.
that usually translates into a great client experience. And at the end of the session, I always give them a cell phone number. Any issues, text me, call me. I'm always available. I will show up at your door in the middle of the night if you tell me you have a vascular occlusion, to come dissolve your filler if I need to. So,
right. Thank you again, Joshua. Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, what you're saying makes so much sense. A risk reward thing on there, and I'm sure they really, really appreciate that personal touch. I'm actually going to circle back into the technology that you're currently using, before I bring it back to this. But one, what sort of technology? How have you been leveraging technology to streamline operations enhance patient communication and overall, improve the efficiency of your practice?
I try to automate as much as I can. So MailChimp has actually been surprisingly good. I use Jane app as my interface for my clinics, but it integrates well with MailChimp. So then all my new clients automatically get added to the mailing list of MailChimp. And then from there, there's automated email reminders every time they have a visit, all those little things that kind of, reminders to send me a review, if I can. And all those things are just automated. So that helps a lot. And I not recently, but I've also used Monday.com as well. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah. So Monday.com, I use that as for automated reminders, just from to-do lists, just to make sure everything I need to get done is kind of top of mind. And I get reminders on a regular basis to make sure those things are, done. Like, whether I need to update my Google business account, my social media posts, all those little things. It's just kind of organized to help me keep top of mind. Not to say get I'm always on top of it, but at least it helps
within reason. And then because the reason I was asking, and Jane obviously is a very, very popular tool when it comes to helping with this, was what's the post treatment flow looking like for patients? Obviously, give the number. I was wondering, are you currently implementing a specific process when it comes to requesting reviews or managing that reputation, or how's that looking at the minute?
Right now, they always get an email a couple hours after their treatment to kind of remind them to send me a Google review.
Nice.
And then if I don't hear anything, I'll kind of I have a little text template I have set up to kind of fire them a quick text just as a quick reminder as well.
Nice.
To do that Google review if they don't respond to my email. And then I always, depending on whether they're first patient or not, I always kind of have them come back after a couple of weeks. If they're a new patient, I always have them come back a couple of weeks just to sort of quick follow up, just to see, especially with Botox. I just want to see how everything settles. And then, or if it's filler and they don't have any issues, I still kind of text them. Hey, it's like, hey, and is everything looking and feeling good? Is there any issues? And then try to touch base within a couple of weeks, typically with most of my clients.
I'm sure they appreciate that. And then I suppose, the journey for people, when it comes to growing a practice, obviously, especially in the aesthetics space, very often, it's often the cross-sell or upsell, so to speak. Once people have received that initial attention to detail from the Botox, how does the process look like for, what have you found powerful in terms of perhaps introducing people to your other services? Like, I'd love to dive deep into what your favorite procedures are. But before you get the chance to hear them, you need to convince patients of them and of their efficacy and so on. And how does that process look like for you?
Well, typically especially if it's a new client, they come in with consult. I always ask them I try not to make recommendations for treatments, because a lot of times, because my philosophy is if the treatment is done well, no one should be able to tell anyway. So the treatment is really for that individual, right? So I always ask them what their concerns are, and then I kind of watch for their not just what they're telling me, but also the nonverbal cues. Because sometimes, they mention their cheeks, but then they're always like, maybe say they're pushing up they mentioned, they're talking about their cheeks. So I was like, I feel like maybe my cheeks are like too narrow or whatever it is, but then they're kind of doing this. So I was like, I noticed you're kind of really pointing down here. Is that, does this really bother you? These marionette lines. And they're like, oh yeah. They've always, and so I was like, that's just watching for those nonverbal cues as well. And then at the same time, I just try to, if that's really something that bothers them, I would then say, okay, well, Botox will help you with the fine lines, but if these really bother you, then dermal filler might be a better option, just because we can create that, replace some of that lost volume in your chin to kind of blend a bit better. So really it comes down to what they express as their concerns are, either verbally or non-verbally, and then I kind of just pick up those little cues and just kind of run from there and see whether that's something they're always interested in. They're typically, more than often than not, again, you kind of hit that hammer on the head when you mention it. They're like, oh yeah, then when they kind of eyes light up, and so then at that point I go through my before and afters and show them this is kind of what you can expect from this treatment. This is what person's before. This is someone who has something similar to yours, and then this is kind of the end result if that's something that you're interested in. So kind of just at least get them mentally prepared for something like that.
And then for anyone listening, obviously there's as the saying goes, there's many ways to skin a cat. There's many ways of achieving different things, especially in a landscape that's updating and evolving as much as aesthetics. What sort of procedures are your go-to? You obviously your standards, your Botox, your filler, but what else do you usually do you work with?
I do. I mean, Botox, dermal filler, and then I have the Plexor Plus as well, which I also specialize in. So the cool thing about the Plexor Plus is that it removes tissue, right? As opposed to adding more, instead of injecting into the face, you're actually removing tissue. So it works really well for stuff like, if you have people who have excess skin on their upper eyelids, right? So it's a good alternative to doing surgical blepharoplasty. Instead of doing surgery to remove the extra skin, this device can non-surgically remove that tissue. So which appeals to a lot of people who don't want to go under the knife. And another option for people who have really deep upper lip lines, like barcode lines, the filler was always an option in the past. Problem with filler is that it adds volume to a place where you might not want extra volume. So because, if you add too much volume here, after a while you start looking like Homer Simpson, and that's really not the best look. Right?
Yeah.
And so then with the Plexor, you can actually remove some of that tissue to smooth out the upper lip without adding volume. So I find that it's a really good adjunct, a really good alternative to the treatments I already offer, just because sometimes adding is not always the best choice. Sometimes you need to take a little bit away. So, and that's the main reason I chose having the Plexor Plus in my clinic, just because I find it for those clients where filler is not the best option, this is usually the next best one.
And then, I suppose, are there any other trends in the industry that you see that you're particularly keeping an eye on, that you're excited to potentially implement yourself at some point?
Yeah, I think there's always lasers and RF microneedling. I think those are quite hot in the industry. I mean, lasers have been around for a long time, but they actually are quite good at dealing with a lot of, especially if you have dark spots in your skin, stuff like that. Those are really good for dealing with those kind of things. Hair removal, resurfacing. Sometimes you just want to improve the texture of your skin. Lasers are good for that. RF microneedling is kind of the next, Morpheus and all those other things. What those does is they increase collagen. It's almost like microneedling with a heated component to the needle, where it stimulates collagen growth in your skin. So it kind of tightens your skin a little bit. And that's something I've always been looking into. At the same time, I think it's also important to be very careful when you're starting a clinic to not over leverage yourself.
Yeah. Less is more.
Yeah, less is more, just because at some point I've seen a lot of clinics go out of business just because they're over leveraged. They come on board, and you talk to these reps and they make it sound very enticing. And to be fair, lasers and RF microneedling requires a lot less skill than injectables. So you can hire someone, for $1 per hour, a smaller dollar per hour amount, and just have them run through these patients and make the money. However, if you don't have enough of a client base yet, especially when you're first starting off, you got to be careful, because those machines can easily run you, $100,000, $200,000 per machine. And now you have that kind of, it adds up quickly. Even if you're doing a monthly payment, you're looking at $3,000-$4,000 a month just to pay off this machine. It's like a mortgage payment or more, right?
Yeah.
And so yes, if you're not making that cash flow, you're constantly going into debt trying to cover the cost of the machine. That could, it's like, it won't last very long. So I think those are good, but I think until you get to a certain point where your cash flow can cover the expenses, it's you want to be a little bit careful to make sure that you're not
Eating yourself dry.
but biting off more than you can chew. So
Yeah.
that's something I might want to implement down the road, and it's especially for clinic that for scaling purposes. I think that's important too. I think that's a really good way to scale, just because it's doing injectables, especially where you are the primary provider, because a lot of people want you as a primary provider because you're good at what you do. It's hard to scale, right? You don't scale, but by adding more services like that, where you can bring in lower cost labor, then yeah, it's much more easier to scale. So that's definitely something I need to consider down the road. But
it's a great point for anyone listening that is considering scaling their med spa. At the end of the day, cash flow is cash flow management in general. I think everyone has made the mistake and be forced to learn from the mistake once or twice in their entrepreneurial journey. But make sure you're managing how much you're over leveraging yourself, if you are. And at the end of the day, sales solve vast majority of problems in business. Although you want to make sure your retention is good, you need to make sure you're consistently bringing in new business. Otherwise, there's only so much you can optimize if you're not consistently increasing your revenue on a month-by-month basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So, and of course, make sure you, like you mentioned earlier, always make sure you reach out to your older clients. Make sure you send those reminders. Make sure your older clients are always coming in. The nice thing about Botox is that every 3 or 4 months they do need a new treatment. So that is kind of your bread and butter is your Botox or your Dysport. But then at the same time, you want to continue to grow your other services as well to make sure you can increase that bottom line.
Definitely. And is there, I suppose, I want to be conscious of your time, Phil, but I have 2 questions. Number one, do you have any advice do you have 2 pieces of advice for anyone that wants help with their business or grow in their clinic, or do you feel like you've got those covered with the capital management and looking at paid? Is there anything big bit of advice you'd have for someone that wants to take their practice to the next level with their clinic?
I think marketing is important. Like we mentioned before, I think paid marketing should be your first go-to, but always grow your SEO bit as well. Blog articles. Always make sure your website is active, just so you kind of show up high on the ranking lists. I think there's a long tail aspect to SEO and organic growth, but I think paid advertising can reach I think there are certain limits to paid advertising, because once you get to a point, you start to get diminishing returns on that paid advertising. Yeah. Right.
It's getting colder and colder.
Yeah, exactly. So then it's, you want to do both at the same time, but paid marketing is a good way to get the ball rolling, like you mentioned, and just be very client focused. Because if the client likes you, if they enjoy their experience, I think that should be the focus, rather than just strictly getting more clients, getting them through the door as quickly as possible. I think having a good client experience, I think, is number one, just because they will more likely come back. They'll more likely refer someone to you in the long run. So a little bit of time goes a long way to make sure they're always satisfied with your product, with their service. Yeah.
Brilliant. And lastly, what does the future look like for Arlo Medical Injections? What's in the horizons? What's the vision?
Well, I'm hoping to just continue to grow. I'm really pushing growth this year, and so with the new marketing insights. So, and eventually, I'd like to bring on more injectors, bring on maybe a new machine, a new device that can again help me scale a little bit better. So I want some of the lasers or my RF needling devices that don't require as much technical skill to operate to allow me to grow my business that much faster.
Brilliant. Well, I wish you all the best to it, and I'm sure I've no doubt you'll smash it. So that being said, Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to doing this again at some point.
No, thank you, Thomas. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.